Today's episode is the classic what's in your bag photography gear episode, except I never actually use a bag. So instead, I'm just going to talk about the gear I'm going to be using in 2022. And at the end of the episode, I'm also going to speak about some of the gear I'm thinking of buying in the near future and some products that will be coming out later on this year. As for my style of photography and what I use this gear for, mostly it's street photography around here in London and the cities I'm going to be going to around the world. Secondly, it's for my professional work, so the shoots I do for brands and stuff like that. And finally, I do YouTube, so these episodes here and the gear I use to make them. And one last thing, if you guys can recommend me a good small bag to carry my camera gear in when I'm traveling, that would be much appreciated. As I said, I absolutely hate how camera bags look, and I've not been able to find a small bag that will fit my gear but doesn't actually look like a tech bag or a camera bag. Also, I'll include all the links to all the products I talk about in this episode in the description down below. Let's kick things off by talking about camera bodies. And first up, we've got this camera here. It's the Fujifilm X-Pro2. So this is a camera which came out all the way back in 2016. And despite having the X-T4, I still prefer using this X-Pro2 for street photography. In my opinion, it's a bit more low-key, less people see it coming, so it just makes it a bit better for street photography. And I just love how it works. I've used it for so many years now. I've gotten used to all the buttons and the setup and just having my hand in the right place at the right time. And furthermore, the newer camera bodies, image quality wise, aren't much better than the images I get out of the X-Pro2. So I probably won't be changing it this year unless Fujifilm do release the X-Pro4 or they release an X-T5 with that new Fujifilm sensor. And that's meant to be like a 42 megapixel stacked sensor. So it should be quite a bump up from the X-T4 and this X-Pro2 here. Next up, there's the X-T4. It's filming this episode now. And I mainly use this camera for my professional work. So whenever I'm doing a shoot for a brand and stuff like that. And secondly, for all my filming, including YouTube. And that's hooked up to a small rig cage. And it has a Ninja Atomos 5 on top. Now, if you guys are interested in seeing how I built the cage and how I use it, I can make an episode on that. Drop it in the comments below if you are interested in something like that. I also have the Fujifilm X-T3, and I mainly keep that around as a backup camera in case either my X-T4 or my X-Pro2 are damaged or they stop working. So let's move over to the lenses I'm going to be using in 2022. First up is one of Fujifilm's older lenses. It's the 35mm f1.4. Now this is one of my favorite lenses. I brought it in early 2021 and it's been the lens I've used most over the past 12 months. Now there is the 33 1.4 and I am still thinking of upgrading to that lens. But I don't know, just like with the X-Pro2, I just love how this lens works. I'm loving the shots I'm getting out of it. I love how it feels and it looks. And I've just gotten so used to using this setup, I don't really want to change anything at this point. But yeah, the 33 1.4, I do have my eyes on it. But for the foreseeable future, I will be sticking with the 35 1.4. So one thing I am going to try to do this year is stick with the same focal lengths as much as possible. And that will probably be the 35 and the 50mm focal ranges. The main reason for this is I want to know exactly how the shot's going to look before I even pick up the camera and look through the viewfinder. Secondly, I want to know exactly how far I need to be from a subject when I'm shooting them with either the 35 and the 50. And that's just going to come by continuously using these lenses and knowing exactly the distances and how far I need to be and where I need to be in the scene to capture the shot I want. So that's something I've done over the last 12 months and I probably will be doing that in 2022. I felt like my photography has improved by doing this. And if you guys are struggling to get some consistency in your work, sticking with the same focal length is probably a good tactic and a good idea. Okay, so next up we've got the Fujifilm f2 lenses. This one in my hand is the 35 f2. I love using these lenses, especially the 50 f2. And despite having the 35 1.4, these are lenses I still use when it's raining, when it's snowing. I do often take these out. And secondly, they're really good when it comes to travel because they're small and they're light and they're really robust too. So yeah, these f2 lenses, they're going to be sticking with me in 2022. Also, a massive shout out to all of you who keep commenting about me flipping these lenses. I appreciate the concern, but believe me, these lenses are safe and they are well looked after. Onto the zoom lenses I'm going to be using. So mostly it's the 16 to 55, and I use that as my travel lens and also for lots of my video work. It's filming this episode right now, and I also have a black mist filter on the front of it. And I normally do that when I'm filming people. It just softens the image a bit and makes it look a bit less digital and more pleasing on the eye. Next up, I've got the 10 to 24. I mostly use this when I'm doing architectural work, and it also doubles up as a good video lens because it is stabilized. Finally, I've got the 55 to 200. This is a telephoto lens. It's a really good lens. I mostly use it for filming B-roll, but it's not a lens I use that often for photography. So they're the three zoom lenses I use. The 16 to 55 pretty much comes with me when I go traveling. As for the other two, it really depends where I'm going and if I'll be using those. As for other tech I use for my day-to-day work, firstly, I've got the MacBook Pro behind me. That's the 14-inch M1 Pro version. And I gotta say, going from the Intel chip Max to the M1 Pro, it's just a massive difference, especially when it comes to exporting files. What used to take me around 2 to 3 hours to export and render a YouTube episode now takes me about 20 minutes. So you can just imagine how much time that saves me, especially because sometimes I export an episode and then I spot a mistake and then I have to go back, change it in Final Cut and re-export it. And if it's taking 2 to 3 hours, then it's pretty much taken up the whole day. Whereas now with the M1 Pro, I just make the changes and I can just get the video file out in about 15 to 20 minutes. On the subject of Macs, I've got this CalDigit USB hub. And in my experience, I've had so many problems with these USB hubs with Mac. This CalDigit one here, this one's been easily the most solid one I've ever used. And I've been using it non-stop for about 1.5 years at this point, and it hasn't failed on me yet. So if you are looking for a USB hub for your MacBook, do look at these CalDigit ones. And finally, when it comes to storage, I do use the Samsung T5 and T7 SSDs. Again, never had a problem with either of these drives, and I use them all the time when I'm traveling. So that's the gear I'll be using in 2022. As for the gear I'm looking to buy this year, first and foremost is the rumored Fujifilm X-H2. Now this is going to be the successor to the X-H1. It's a video specific camera from Fujifilm that's meant to compete with the Sony video options. And as I look to get more and more into video this year, I feel like a camera like that is going to be a perfect fit. In terms of camera lenses, I'm pretty happy with my setup right now. As I said earlier, the 33 1.4 is one I do have my eye on. And secondly, is the rumored 56 1.2 Mark II. Now that 56 1.2 is actually one of my favorite Fujifilm lenses. I don't actually own it, but I have used it multiple times over the past 12 months. And I love it. It's like a great lens, especially when it comes to doing portraits or even street photography. It's a great lens. The only thing is, it's pretty old at this point, and if there's a new one coming out, I don't feel the need to pick up the old lens now. I'd rather just wait to see if there is a new one coming out, and then I'll pick up that, because that will probably have the new autofocusing motors, and it will also be weather sealed as well. So yeah, the 33 1.4 and the rumored 56 1.2. So that just about wraps things up here. As I said earlier, all the links to all the products in this episode will be in the description down below. And if you guys have any recommendations or you want to talk about the gear you're going to be using in 2022, drop them in the comments down below as well, and I'll make sure to get back to you. Finally, a huge thanks to all of you guys for all the support over the last 12 months. We're over 8,000 subs now on this channel, and things are just going to get bigger and bigger from this point onwards. So a huge thanks to all of you guys for subscribing, for commenting, for liking, and yeah, a huge thanks for watching this episode as well. As always, stay safe, get out there and shoot, and I'll catch you in the next one.